Yes, so we have seen that as our renal filtrate is ascending up the ascending limb, it becomes more dilute. Okay? It becomes more dilute because the sodium ions together with the chloride ions are absorbed from the renal fluid. So the distal convoluted tubule, it plays some key part as far as water absorption. Okay, it's not that key as to compare to the descending and the collecting duct, but it also plays some part as far as water absorption is concerned. Because see, as you are moving up, the concentration keeps on decreasing and the liquid becomes more dilute. So water can still diffuse out. But it plays a key role as far as regulation of potassium ions and sodium ion concentration is concerned. Now this is actually where the concentration of urine is determined. How much potassium ions are you going to release out? How much sodium ions are you going to retain in the body? In that, in the distal, here we have there the secretory cells that will release the potassium ions from the interstitial fluid into the renal filtrate, and then in the process, more sodium ions will be absorbed. Okay, from the filtrate into the interstitial fluid. And so you'll be able to regulate how much potassium ions should you excrete out of the body and how much sodium ions would you need to absorb back. Now it also plays some important part as far as maintaining the pH of this of blood is concerned. In that, depending on the need, it will be responsible either to release to absorb hydrogen ions from the interstitial fluid, and then as to balance that net charge, then bicarbonate ions will be released from the renal fluid to the interstitial fluid and finally to blood. And you know bicarbonate ions play an important role as far as regulation of pH is concerned. And we shall talk about the kidney and pH regulation, how the kidney or how pH is regulated in our bodies, and we shall be able to see the role of the kidney together with bicarbonate ions and the hydrogen phosphate ions and pH regulation is concerned. Now away from the distal or from the distal convoluted tubule, then our renal filtrate, it will proceed to the collecting duct. Now the collecting duct is not part of the nephron, but it's also key as far as urine production is concerned, as far as regulation, so the reabsorption of materials is concerned. Now the collecting duct, now here, somebody asked as we were studying that much water proceeds, much water continues up to the collecting duct. How is it absorbed? Now the collecting duct, it carries the filtrate through the medulla up to the renal pelvis. You remember that structure of the renal pyramid that is connected to the renal pelvis through different calyces. The calyx, where you have the major and the minor calyx. Okay? and the minor calyx is connected at the base of the pyramid. You still remember that basic structure. So now, these collecting ducts, they are the ones which transport our filtrate to the pelvis for excretion. Now, as the collecting duct is spanning through the medulla, it will encounter the highly concentrated medulla. The medulla will be full of sodium ions and chloride ions, and the concentration of the medulla is going to be high, so that the osmotic potential, the osmotic pressure of the medulla cells, of the cells in the medulla, is high, which allows absorption of water. Now, the collecting duct has very many on a, like the descending limb. It also has very many aquaporins, whose opening and closure can be controlled by a hormone. Which hormone? ADH hormone. Okay? ADH hormone. That if the concentration of this hormone is too much, or if you have a high concentration of ADH hormone, then more aquaporins will be opened, and so you increase the permeability of the collecting duct to water. Hence, much water is going to be reabsorbed from the renal filtrate into the interstitial fluid. Okay? And you control the amount of water that is going to be excreted. And in this case, you produce a hypertonic urine, a highly concentrated urine. But now, in cases where you don't need to conserve water, then you release this ADH, so that the concentration of ADH hormone, okay, is going to be limited, is going to be low. There will be a low concentration of ADH hormone. So as a result, there will be a decrease in the permeability of these collecting ducts. These aquaporins, these protein molecules, channel protein molecules that do allow water to penetrate or to pass through, they won't be open, and so you reduce the permeability of the collecting duct to water. And so as a result, much water will proceed to the renal pelvis, where you will now excrete dilute urine. And so depending on the need at that particular moment, whether you need water, a lot of water, whether you need to conserve water, whether you don't need to conserve water, it will determine how permeable the collecting ducts are going to be. So the hormonal determines the extent to which urine becomes concentrated. Now, conserving water, the aquaporin channels within the collecting duct allow water molecules to cross through the epithelium, and hence you conserve more water. But the opening and closure of these aquaporins, these protein channels, is determined or is regulated by the hormone. Which hormone? ADH. But it remains impermeable. Yes, you open the aquaporins and you don't open other protein channels responsible for the inorganic ions, so therefore it will remain impermeable to salt and other materials such as urine. So in the process, you'll be able to pass out urine. You'll be able to filter urine. So in case there are queries, feel free guys to reach my inbox. Feel free to ask me. So now with tubular secretion, now we have seen that our glomerular filtrate is going to, the glomerular filtrate that will be formed here, it will move along this kidney nephron, okay? And you have seen that as the filtrate is moving through the nephron, we shall have materials that will be selectively reabsorbed back. But in the process, as you are absorbing back these materials, then other materials will be secreted into the renal filtrate. Okay? Depending on the need of excreting these materials, depending on the environment at that particular moment. So these materials include wastes, such as more urea is going to be excreted back. It's going to be excreted into the nephron so that you increase, okay, from the peritubular capillaries to our nephron, to the rumen, to the renal filtrate, so that you pass out more. Such as drugs. Yes, drugs can also be secreted into the renal filtrate. And excess ions such as potassium ions, hydrogen ions, and ammonia, depending on the need at that particular moment, it will determine how much is going to be secreted into the nephron. And so how the concentration of urine, which kind of urine is you are going to pass out. So basically that's how simple our urine is going to be formed. That's basically the physiology, formation of urine.